Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Daniel McComber, and with me today is Matt and Lauren Griner. They're relationship coaches and public speakers. Today we cover a whole range of things, but we specifically focus on how sales reps and entrepreneurs can improve their relationships, how you could do personal work in order to help the relationship that you have. And it doesn't have to be just with in marriage or girlfriends. It can be with family members as well, or friends. And we cover specific things about how you can get better at communicating with your relationships in your life. So I hope you enjoy the episode. So you guys made this, huh?
Yeah, we made those.
Yeah, whether you're starting a new relationship or aligning an existing one. Dude, because I saw you guys like doing it just like on one of your reels, and I was like, how many times a week would you prefer to have sex?
So there's like sex and intimacy, there's spiritual and intellectual, there's kids and future,
categories.
or like kids and family. Oh shoot, what's the last one?
Mental
And
How long did you take for you guys to come up with this? It's so cool.
I did it in a day,
Like in
order
a
from
day,
China, and they were
yeah.
there 2 weeks after.
What?
we like bought.
I mean, like it was
Or
gradual.
did you come up with the
so-
questions?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how long did it take
Yeah.
for you to like come up
Well,
with
so
the
we,
questions?
just so you know, like us, like we went through a year and a half of coaching with a relationship coach.
and
then
then for your
got-
personal needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then got certified under her to do the same thing.
Oh,
And,
okay, cool.
So like we had like accumulated a lot of knowledge, and conversation cards was like the thing that helped us out of all of our stuff. So it was
Really?
like, so we like, she says like we were conversation card snobs, dude. We bought like all
like
of
I
them.
have like probably
So-
everyone you could ever buy, just because like at the very beginning of our whole journey, it was so funny. We actually talked about this the other day. We like planned this little date, and there were conversation cards like on like the little picnic tables for our anniversary, and we were like not in a good spot. And so I was just kind of like, do we even go on this like anniversary date? Like, truthfully,
yeah.
I was kind of like, okay, it was kind of this like the start to the storm. And so we started the
But all of them
date,
were-
and they were on there, and we like
Yeah.
from that they had like the best questions in there, and we were like, wait, like we're actually talking, we're actually like having conversation that's not just like, so like how do you feel about the kids and like all these, like it wasn't just like your
Yeah.
everyday, like the conversation card topics like totally sparked these new conversations within us. And I was like, wait, I love these. So then we were doing all of them anytime we could, like in the car, any date night, like all the
Really?
time. Yeah. And so I was like, we need to do our own conversation cards. So like if you watch the beginnings of like our podcast, we don't have those yet. And so like we talk
Oh.
about like the other conversation cards that we have, and like
Yeah.
anyway, so then we were like, we need to make these, because we wanted to take, because some of the questions are stupid in the other one. So I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want any stupid questions. Like I want like the good stuff. So
Yeah.
we Matt did a really good job and designed all these, and
So
they're
kind of
awesome.
compiled all your favorite ones into
Yeah.
one that you think is like most applicable.
Yeah, and then kind of put our own questions in there and
Okay,
things
cool.
like that. Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, I mean, we've been rolling for a second here, so let's just get into it.
Okay.
Because I'm really, I mean, getting to know your backgrounds a little bit more. That when I was looking into you guys and I saw like how happy you were now, but then you guys being super honest about like the hard times that you've been through,
Yeah.
and then learning that you did sales for a little bit, I'm like, okay, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, dude.
Because honestly, I think the people, one, I know I'm going to benefit greatly from this conversation, but
love
two, I
that.
know anybody listening, most of my audience is in sales or entrepreneurship,
Love
Yeah.
it.
which is kind of like, in a lot of the ways, the same thing, same problems that spark in marriages,
Yep.
right? And so having a couple that is obviously putting in the work to have a great relationship,
Yeah.
and like helping others to do it. I mean, shoot, just want to pick your brains.
I love
so
it.
appreciate you
Let's
guys
go.
coming on.
Well, even to speak to that, dude, a lot of the people that probably listen to you or gravitate towards your message have been down like, hey, I've made my money, right?
Yeah.
And I know my career, and I kind of put my relationship on the back burner for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen. Like we literally have half of our clientele is that person where it's like, hey, I want to build a better relationship, even though I built this really cool life, but now my relationship's lacking. So,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually love that. I think 2 and 2, I mean, it's going to go together pretty well. So
Yeah. Well, honestly, the hard thing about sales and entrepreneurship is, especially sales, meaning like door to door or whatnot,
Yeah.
where you don't have like you're not clocking in,
Yeah.
is since you're not clocking in, it's finding the balance between, people say like work-life balance, but I think it's more like just because your work is your life in that capacity. And so it's like, your life/work and then family. Because
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of, and you know this, so much of like our lives is intertwined with sales, where it's like, hey babe, I got to go to work. Oh, okay, cool. What are you doing? Oh, I'm taking guys to Topgolf.
Yeah.
She's like, that's not work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I kind of have interwoven my life into sales and my businesses
Yeah.
to where I don't need much of like a personal life outside of it, if that makes sense. And so really it's like, okay, my family is the only thing that's not necessarily integrated with my business.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure those two things out is the biggest thing. So I think that a lot of guys are in the same boat and would benefit from a little bit of relationship coaching.
Love it.
We agree. No, truthfully.
Yeah.
Dude, we were in that same spot because it's like, I mean, door-to-door guys, they leave their wives for like the whole summer, if not more.
Yeah.
Right. So,
especially with the summer sales programs. It's
So-
terrible.
Which can be like so hard on the wife's perspective. Like when Matt and I first got married, we did the whole summer sales gig and like we didn't have kids. And so it was just us, but we were newlyweds. And so going from being like, wait, I kind of thought life was going to be this like I think women a lot of times, and if this helps men even like a tiny bit, it's like women have this story that we've like created in our heads of like, okay, no, I'm going to get married and then I'm going to like have the house and the kids. And like we have like played like house since we were little, right? And guys are just like, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have sex, it's gonna be awesome, I'm gonna make money, I'm gonna have a good job. And it's like, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But like you guys are two totally different people. And so especially in the entrepreneur field, when men are like, okay, no, like I have this story and I have this role that I'm gonna go do, women are kind of like, well, this wasn't what I had written out. This isn't. So like then you're you start off the bat like completely on different pages, which is where we were at. Do you know what I mean? And then it kind of became this like, I mean, for us, it was like a competition in my head where it was like, hold on, no, like if you're going to go do this, like, well, I'm also going to go do this. And like, do you know what I mean? But I wanted the family, I wanted all that, but I also didn't want to get left in the dust a little bit. And I think that that's where sometimes women are just kind of like, well, like, what is my role? Like, where do I even fit in? Like, does he have time for me? Do you know what I mean? Because like, I think a lot of times we want to support and we want to be there, but then a lot of times they get kind of left on the back burner a little bit, and things aren't, noticed, and they just kind of feel like, well, I'm just here.
Well, I like what you said there is like they want to support. So I'm just curious from your personal. So did you know that you're going to do summer sales before you guys got married?
No, it was like a year after we got married that I went into it.
Okay. So you didn't prepare her for that.
No, not at all.
No.
So I guess you like got married and then you kind of like were going and then, hey, I'm going to do the summer sales thing. And so thankfully, you guys had kind of a year to yourselves before the summer sales started, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what about that first summer, just maybe with your expectations that maybe weren't met or your expectations that weren't met? What was like maybe the hardest thing, just out of curiosity?
Like in our relationship?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go first?
I mean, do you want me to just open the can of worms up right now?
Well,
I'm
yeah.
going to.
So I don't know. Our story, if anybody follows us, our story is that like from a really young age, I was exposed to porn. Right. And it was so interesting that like, even that you asked this question, but the first summer out, so I had served an LDS mission, right? And then come back, we got married, we'd been married for a year and then we went out and do summer sales.
Yeah.
And like, porn came right back into my life, right?
Course,
even after I got married. And I was just like, cause I never thought that was going to be the plan. Right. And so like while we were in Louisiana, like she finds porn on my computer and I'm like, oh gosh. Right. So that was the very first, like we were newlyweds and like we just got tossed into the, like,
You never thought that you'd be in that position.
Right. And so by my own doing, we got tossed into this really rocky situation and then we had to live out the summer that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Without any tools or ways of knowing how to handle it.
For sure.
At that point.
So mentally it took a toll on me, but also on her. Right. And then because we weren't raised to be able to tell the truth or talk or be honest or like actually address something. Right. I think we just saw from society that like people got divorced when something like that happened. Right.
Oh, okay.
We just went quiet. We didn't talk about it. We thought everything was good, right?
Yeah.
And
well, real quick, just before you continue on that story, you said
go for it.
Based on society, people get divorced.
Yeah.
Now I know we grew up not too far from each other.
Yeah.
Right. And so, one thing, and since I didn't know if we're going to get to this point, so I'm curious. One thing that I've realized now that I've kind of lived outside of Utah for years, I run into couples who are like, we watch porn together.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like completely changed my perspective on just culture, society, sex, and all that kind of stuff. And so
beautiful.
When you say, you know, what you two are used to is people are getting divorced. Is it because of like the religious backgrounds where you guys grew up? Because a lot of couples, I guess, in the world don't.
For sure. I think a lot of it has to do not necessarily with, I think religion plays a huge key in it. I think depending on your background of how you were raised and like, you know, are you worthy is like, you know, it kind of goes back to like, who did I marry? You know, like, does he fit that mold? Or, you know, like, I never thought my husband would do that. I think a lot of people also have different perspectives on like, okay, cool, is porn cheating? Is it not? Do you know what I mean? So it really is getting so specific of like, okay, well, what does it mean to you? I remember like when we got into the thick of us, like, porn is like not really a big thing, truthfully, but for our relationship, it was huge because for me, it caused so much internally for me that I was just like, hold on, do I want to continue in a relationship like this? Yeah. I mean, granted, I could get in another relationship and someone could have this exact same problem, right? Yeah. But it was like forcing me to start to look at what I wasn't actually looking at internally for me. So it actually propelled me to start doing my own work without me realizing it. Yeah. But I think a lot of times the reason people get divorced is because they're not willing to look at themselves. And they're like, no, it's okay. Like, if this is his problem, he's never going to get over it. All of that. And like you said, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, if you look at it in overall thing, in Utah, it's huge, right? It's like, you're going to hell. You can't come back from it. There's a lot of shame around it. Yeah, and it's stupid. Truthfully, it's so dumb. But outside looking in, it's like, if you really take like the magnifying glass away, it's like, I think people get divorced because they don't want to actually look at themselves in this situation of what's happening. Because I think you can come back from anything. Yeah. It really is just like, okay, where are you at and what do you want to do with the information or with what's been given to you? How do you want to propel forward? How do you want to move forward there with your partner or without your partner? So I always tell Matt, I'm like, it's nice because it forced me to really look at myself. Like, I truly thought I was perfect. I thought I had no issues. So it got me to really start to be like, hold on, okay, cool. Like, what am I struggling with? What do I need? What am I lacking? All those kind of things.
That was literally going to be a question I was going to ask, and I'm sure you're going to hit on this too, where I was like, how much of, when you guys get like new couples that come in, like how much of it is actually them just working on their own individual problems compared to them like on a relationship scale?
Yeah, 100% of the time. Right? And I think that's why our approach to this is a little bit different than like maybe a therapist or a marriage counselor, right? Because when we went and did the work for ourselves too, because we hired a relationship coach. It was literally one of the very first questions was, do you believe you create your own world? And so the very first time that we sat down with this relationship coach, she separated us. Not physically, but like emotionally, mentally, like you're not together, right? Your answers cannot pertain to her. Yours can't pertain to his. And we had to build up our own worlds and our own kind of this personal development journey for ourselves to then look at our relationship and start to create something new. Right. And so 100% of the time, that's what it is. And that's why it's so important that when somebody goes into maybe a marriage counselor or a therapist, right, if there's any blame or expectation on there, then that might be the right fit for you. Because if you can say like, he did this and it made me feel this, right, from the therapist, then we're not looking at ourselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, that makes sense.
And I think like, kind of to go back to like the pornography thing of like people getting divorced, especially with like separating your worlds and separating like the story that your head's telling you. Yeah. It's so cool when we sit across from couples that deal with this specifically or infidelity. It's really the topic. Like, I always ask the question, like, is it really about the porn? Like to the wife, like I'll always ask, or you know, like the opposite partner, like, is it really about the porn, or like, what is the underlying root reason why you're so upset about it? Yeah. And it's like, it's never really about the porn. Like, it's really not. It's about the fact that, like, they want to feel loved. They want to feel, but it's because, like, they're lacking that within themselves. So, like, these women are just going around, and, like, we deal a lot with more of, like, you know, men's, like, addictions to pornography more than women's. Because I know women struggle with it. Like, I grew up and I had seen pornography. I had watched it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But really, it's the comparison. Women, like, personalize things so much, whereas men are just kind of like, oh, like, she's a pretty girl, cool. And they, like, move on, where girls are like, oh my gosh, he wants me to look like that. And he wants me to be like this. And I need to be more like this. And, like, they just personalize everything. So it really comes down to, like, it's never really about the pornography. It's like, okay, no, like, in my world, what's going on for me and what do I need? And, like that's my favorite thing to do with couples is, like, separate them and be like, okay, cool, like, what is it in your world that you're going through? And what do you need? And, like, what are you lacking? And then also, like, do you want to be let into your partner's world too? Because a lot of times we want to be let in, but we actually really don't because we don't really care. Like we want to like listen to tell our story, to tell our side. We don't want to actually listen or be let into like their world to actually like empathize with them and be there and comfort and like go to those emotions that they're feeling. We kind of want to just like fix the problem or, you know, kind of move on to the next thing.
Oh, that's interesting. So even though women tend to be kind of like on the emotional spectrum, a lot more developed and so forth, you're saying that they don't always necessarily want to go in and work in that space with their spouse. They would rather just kind of have it be fixed.
I think women, and I'm going to get totally like shit on for this and it's whatever, but I think women are very like emotionally unavailable, truthfully. And I'm talking from my own experience of like, I thought that I was somebody who like, he could come to me for anything and like, I wanted to have all these deep conversations, but at the end of the day, like when he would come to me with a like something that was deep, I was like, I actually don't know how to handle this. Like, hold on. And that's what I wanted, but I didn't know how to actually like tap into myself. So if he would ask me like deeper questions, I was kind of like, let's move on. Like, let's focus on something else for you. Because I think women are like so. Let's focus on everybody else. Let's not really focus on ourselves. So the second the spotlight's turned on to me, I'm like. Wait, I actually have to look at these things. Like, I actually don't know how to look at my emotions. I don't actually know how I feel because I'm so focused on the kids or you or, you know, my callings or my, you know, my business or whatever I'm doing, right? Yeah. So
well,
it's
it
really
sounds
hard.
like you're speaking from experience and going back to the story from the original, right? Like, he came to you, or I guess you found like the pornography and whatnot, and that was probably your first massive obviously argument, but first massive indication that you were not ready for emotionally to handle that.
I really wasn't. I like found it. I remember like I found it. He was out. Like he had just left for the day. Like because I am me and I like don't sit still very well. So I got a job waiting tables while he was out doing summer sales because I was like I'm bored. Like I can only hang out with the wives that have kids for so much. Like I don't have kids. I really want kids. I'm not in this state. So I was like I'll go wait tables. Like that sounds like fun. And I had never lived outside of Utah. So it was really cool for me to get like the cultural experience of living somewhere else.
Especially Louisiana. I did a summer in Louisiana, man. It's crazy.
Well, and I met the most incredible people waiting tables and had like the coolest experiences. But I remember finding it and texting him and then he was like, oh my gosh, like I'll come out, like I'll come back. And I'm like, no, like go do your freaking job. Like I was so pissed. And he came back and I think I left like a week later. I was like, I'm going home. Because I was so angry and I didn't know how to actually talk about it. I was just like, I'm going to go home. I'll go live with my mom and dad like until you finish out this summer and like I'll see you when you get home. And so we kind of did that. And like, I mean, obviously we talked because we're married and we would like text back and forth, but we literally never talked about it. And I remember talking to my mom and she was like, it's okay. Like there could be worse things. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, there could be. Like, we'll just brush it in the rug. It's all good. No big deal.
Okay. Not a healthy way.
We literally never talked about it. It was just kind of like this happened. He's like, I'll never do it again. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like my self-confidence was hit big time. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of like, oh, wait, like you're my husband. Like, I didn't think you were going to do this. Like, and I think women go that route where they're like, well, why are you looking at other women? Why are you doing this? Like, why are you outsourcing that way?
It's something that's so hard to understand.
It really is so hard to wrap your head around it. But I feel like once you wrap your head around it and once you can be like, wait, this actually makes a lot of sense. You can kind of take yourself out of it. It's like night and day difference. You're like, okay, I get where you're coming from. I understand it there.
But I think that that's probably why summer sales or like the sales industry is so hard. To answer your original question is because it does create a gap in your relationship.
Yeah.
Like there is so much time apart and the other, like the wife does not even get to know about what you're doing.
Oh,
right. Yeah. Nor does like, and you create this relationship where she doesn't really care as long as like the bank account's full, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And you don't really want to share because there's nothing really substantial to share other than like, hey, I sold it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you don't want to like come home and complain.
Right.
As, as men, you don't want to do that.
And so
that's tough.
I think it drives this gap in relationships where it's just like, well, do I really know my spouse? And what are we actually creating? Right. Yeah. Because that's what happened to us where it was just like, I mean, distance does a number on a marriage. Right. And then time away from like your kids and everything does too. So
yeah, absolutely.
That was probably one of the biggest things that was the most difficult was that like it did create separation. Right.
Mm-hmm.
When we like gravitated towards each other, usually like it was something that pushed us apart.
Absolutely.
So,
when you have expectations for how the summer is going to go, neither one of you lived up to each other's expectations. Big shocker there, right? Yeah. And so you're forced to try to finish this summer with this going on the back of your head. I can't imagine that was a pleasant summer.
Yeah.
or I don't know, hopefully you were able to finish it off somewhat successful?
It was all right. I sold like 50 accounts. It wasn't great.
Well, dude, one, for your first summer, that's tough. But two, dude, with anytime there's like a lot of like personal drama going on, going to work in our capacity where you can't just clock in, clock out, it's legit. Like if I'm not showing up, I'm not going to get anything.
And that point is perfect because like that's where we wanted to bring this to individuals like yourself and all of your audience, because once your relationship is clicking and aligned, everything else becomes easier.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, it's the idea of it's the idea that when things are good at home, it just bleeds, like the confidence that you can get from that bleeds into sales, and sales is what? Confidence, right?
But it's not just home though, too. Like we're relationship coaches, and the reason that we chose that is because we have relationships to everything and everyone, right? Like literally your relationship to the world, society, the way you view your parents, the way you view your kids, your relationship with your coworker, spouse, all of that is a relationship. Yeah. And it all starts with one thing, and it's you.
Oh, right.
So if we can't fix the relationship to you and figure out why you're doing the things that you do, why you say the things that you say, right? And go back, right? And actually figure you out, then your relationship to everything is going to be construed.
Gotcha.
Right. And so this word relationship, it's generally is how are we connecting to ourselves so we can be able to connect to somebody else.
Yeah.
So
when you get, I can imagine that in the world that we're talking about, sales entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You probably get a lot of polarizing opposites in couples where you have like either a woman who is fed up and starts doing her own personal work and then is like trying to drag her husband to do it, or the opposite. I mean, me personally, I joined the men's group the other day. Because I thought it was like a networking thing.
I feel like everybody joins because they think it's networking. Yeah. And then it's so much more than that. That's awesome.
Told me, I talked to other guys like, no, you like put in a lot of work to like work on yourself. I'm like, whatever the hell that means. Okay, I'm pretty good guy, so whatever. So anyways, I kind of like got tricked into working on myself. But I'm the kind of guy that just absolutely loves it. That's my personality type. I love it. I love diving into myself, knowing how I think and knowing where I can improve. And so, I kind of joined this world where I'm like constantly working on myself, learning what breath work is, all this great stuff. And then having a spouse she's Eastern European, she comes from Slovakia, a lot of amazing qualities that come from that. But one of the things is, she's got her guard up when it comes to anything that's kind of like socially different So I feel like, and now she's actually been coming along. She's been doing her own little things, and it's been great.
Awesome.
But the cool thing is that, I should say, the cool and hard thing is that one couple kind of gets into it, or one person of the couple gets into it. But the hard thing is that getting the other person to get on board. I mean, you guys run into this, I'm sure, quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah.
We didn't have very much like friction when it came to that, right? But here's how I'll answer that, is that spirituality in a whole, right, and connection to self looks different for every single person, right? So you're talking about like if we're going to go to breathwork sessions together, or if we're going to start meditating together, or maybe that route, right? What if her meditations and what if her breath work was just something different? What if it was truthfully like going to the gym? What if it was shopping? What if however she wants to connect to herself so she feels aware enough to be okay in society and in the world, that's enough, right? And that's where I feel like a lot of couples get frustrated, because it's like, hey, I'm working on myself, but you're not. And I think the work on yourself is just self-awareness, right? And that's where we bring emotions into everything. Because if we can be emotionally stable, where if somebody's pissing us off or if somebody's making us sad, and we understand that that's all having to do with us rather than someone else, then that's the work. Right? Because the goal in all of this is to release the judgment on self, so we can start to see ourselves through somebody else's mirror, and then help show them that gift as well. Right? And so, I think so many couples, and especially like, because Lauren's in a women's group and then I'm part of WAT as well. But so many couples go through this where it's just like the woman will start to do the work and like enter the hippie world, right?
Exactly.
But then the man doesn't want anything to do with that. But truthfully, that's just not their route. And if they want to be part of it, great. If they don't, then can we see them for who they are and what they love as well? Right?
I think another thing is I think there's a lack of, couples just assume that they should just want to join. They should just want to like jump on board. Like, look how awesome this is. Like, you should just want to come with me. Like, you want to do breath work? Like, let's go. This should be so awesome.
So guilty over here.
But there's
oh, really? Yeah, dude.
but there's no conversation about it, right? They're like Matt was saying, the emotional side of it like really expressing like, for you, it's like, okay, in my world, like, this is what this is doing for me, and I want you to see, if you want to, I want you to come and like see why I love this so much. Do you know what I mean? And using emotions in there of like, you know, like my desire in this is like to show you that like, you know, how much I've tapped into myself and like, you know, the answers that we can get there. And so I think a lot of times, like Matt was saying, that route looks different for everybody. Like, Matt connects to himself a lot differently than I connect to myself. Do you know what I mean? And then there are things that we can do to come together. It was funny. He like loves cold plunging and things like that. And I hate being cold. So I'm always like, ugh. But he planned a date night the other night and he was like, hey, I really want to go try cold plunging. Like, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. And I was like, no, like if you're going to plan it, I know how much you love it. I'm going to do it. And we went, and it was so much fun to like, for me to get out of my comfort zone to do something that like I don't normally do. There had to be a willingness there, right? Of me being like, hey, I want to spend time with you. I want to see your world. I want to see why you love this. And like, it was cool to have him let me into that during that experience. And he was like, I mean, I'll like just share. It was so funny. The cold plunge was there, and I was like, I don't really want to get in that. I watched him do it, and I was like, I don't really want to get in that.
Yeah, he gets out all red.
No, literally. And he was like doing push-ups, and I'm like, I'm in a swimsuit. Like, that's the last thing I want to do is be doing push-ups. And he was like, Lauren, he was like, imagine the water is like money. And he was like, you're resisting, like, because we've been like going through like money blocks and trying to figure out our like relationship to money and things like that lately in our relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
And he was like, imagine that the water is money and like you're resisting it and you don't want to go in it. And I was like, I hate you because I don't want to get in that damn water. But it was cool because it brought us closer together, where I was all of a sudden like, wait, we're doing this as a couple and we're here like, you know, in a marriage, and I want to show him that I'm also willing to do the hard stuff just like he is. And so I was like, ugh, he got in the hot tub and I was like, oh shit, I've got to get in this damn cold plunge. And it took me a minute and I sat on the edge, but I finally got in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm so proud of you that you got in. And I was like, I literally couldn't let you like after you said all those things, I was like, I can't let him down. I don't want to let myself down either. So I think sometimes it can look different just depending on the conversation of like, hey, I really want to show you this. I really want to, you know, like bring you along. Because I think a lot of times there's like an assumption there that they should just join. But like, have you actually really talked to them and told them why you love it or why you're doing it or why you're reading this book or, you know, all of those things. There's just that conversation piece is missing a lot of the times.
Matt, I want to hear what did it feel like for you when she got in the cold plunge like that?
So I think one of the easiest ways to connect as a relationship is doing something that's not somebody else's expertise, right? Cold plunging is really hard for me, but I know the benefits of it, right? Yeah. And I know that it's very hard for her, but she doesn't understand the benefits of it, right? So, and this is not something that we do as a couple together ever.
No, literally ever.
Yeah.
Like,
and so most couples don't enjoy getting in cold water.
Right.
No.
Right. So to answer your question, I think the easiest way to connect to your spouse is doing something that's going to raise an emotion that one of you is not an expert at. So it's picking something where you have even like level ground. Right.
Okay.
And that was this for us because like getting in for me, I had a whole bunch of mental blocks that I wanted to get over.
Okay.
And so I was able to do that and she was able to do the same thing. And so it helped me see where I can help her with her, let's say, weaknesses, right?
Okay.
And help her overcome. But then it also gave me like the awesome opportunity to see that for myself as well. So
and I feel like it also gave us opportunity to like meet on an emotional level that we were both at. So like getting in the cold plunge was scary for both of us, right? So we were at fear. Yeah. So like it was something scary, but like on the other side of fear on our emotion chart is desire. And so it's like, okay, cool. Or underneath it. Is it underneath it?
Well, that's actually what I was going to say. As you
above it, yeah.
So I'm going to pull it up too, and on the podcast here, I'm going to pull it up as well because I took a screenshot of it because I've never seen that. I've seen like the emotion wheel. You know what that is? Yeah. Yeah, buddy.
There's a lot on
introduced me to that, and that's like intense. It's really cool to kind of figure it out. Yeah. But I like this. So 700 to 100 or 1,000 enlightenment, and then down to shame. Yeah. And so is this kind of just like categorizing where you are at any given time?
So the numbers on the left-hand side are like energetic frequencies to the emotion that's listed on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And so the very bottom emotion that's on the chart is shame, and that's at like a 20 energetic frequency, which just means that like when you're in your most shameful moments, you're not showing up energetically in your life. right? Like
Yeah.
you're not clicking, things aren't working for you. Like you're at
Yeah.
your lowest of low, right?
Okay.
And then it just gradually goes up that way. And so it like tailors to like the hippie world, and then also to like the normal with the emotions,
Yeah.
right? So
Because I guess the energetic frequency, I definitely don't understand that, even though I've been in
well, it's
doing
just
stuff,
it's just
but-
like when you feel good about yourself, you're able to perform. When you feel bad about yourself, it's harder.
Oh,
That's
okay.
energy, right?
Gotcha.
So-
Yeah.
That's just
So
like
kind
how
of
you're
how
you're
you're
showing up.
feeling, how you're showing up.
The
Okay.
type of energy that you have within your body.
Right.
It's actually really cool. Like the emotion scale for us was something that was like eye opening, I feel like, because like I was talking about, a lot of times like women are like, and I feel like men are like, well, I don't really know how I do feel. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
happy, sad, angry, like those are kind of the emotion, tired.
Very
Like those
basic.
are the emotions that we're like used to saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But this brings it up. Like, so when we coach couples, that is something that we're typically like, hey, put as your screensaver on your phone because it'll help you check in every single day of like, okay, well, where am I at? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the reason, sorry to cut you
you're
off,
great.
the reason for it is though, is because it goes back to the very beginning of our story. The fact that we didn't know how to talk about what we were going through.
Right.
Right?
That makes sense.
And so, and it's because there was so much put on me as far as like, oh, this is my fault. I feel like a piece of shit, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life.
Yeah.
I made her feel bad, right? We had no idea what emotions we were going through.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward 8 years into our relationship, and we ended up hiring a relationship coach.
Yeah.
She teaches us emotion,
Right.
right? And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've literally lived in shame and guilt my entire life.
Wow.
Like the very bottom two emotions, I maybe went up to like anger a couple of times.
Yeah.
But very rarely did I ever go past anger into like pushing into my higher emotions and like the positive emotions.
Yeah.
Which sucks to say, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's a cool realization because and she lived up there. Like she lived in positivity, right? But she had no idea how I felt in my
Yeah.
most shameful and guilty moments, right?
Because it is internal. Yeah.
And so there was no way for us, like at the very beginning of our story, to actually connect because we had no idea how to do it emotionally.
Right. Well, I
Right.
mean, he could be feeling way low frequency, like guilt, shame, grief, and you're way high.
Yeah.
And because you don't know how to communicate, you think that it's your fault that he's not
Yeah,
performing
beautiful.
or whatnot.
For sure.
And I think and the reason why I say that is in sales specifically, and that's why I was saying it's so hard to perform in sales or perform as a businessman if you are way down in those low frequencies. Because
Yeah.
what do they say? Like, that's why I mean motivation is such like a huge thing in our industry where it's
Yeah,
like,
dude.
let's go get high, because they have to kind of fake it to get, and maybe they're faking these higher levels. But
Right,
like
dude.
as soon
For
as they
sure.
get in the car, what happens? Just
Yep.
right
Yeah.
back down. Like,
Yep.
shit, I need an energy drink on the way out the area.
Yeah.
So they down 300 milligrams of caffeine,
Yep.
and maybe the caffeine is kind of like triggering dopamine that is kind of like convincing their brain to spike up high again.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it like wears off and they get some rejection, they're right back down. And it's
Yeah.
a freaking roller coaster. That's why sales is a roller coaster. I think it's mainly a roller coaster for the people who are just super not, and I guess alignment maybe isn't the word, but not on the right frequency.
Dude,
For sure.
yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people live in apathy. So apathy is right above shame and guilt.
Okay.
And apathy is just kind of that numb state, like you were talking about, where you're like, I need an energy drink. I need this. That's like when you start to kind of go to your vices or you disassociate with whatever it is, or you're faking it. You know, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, like I'm fine. But then deep down, you're like, no, I'm actually not really. The interesting part is I think that if people were a little bit more aware of their emotions, especially in the sales world, and you could tap into those emotions and you could like understand where the person that you're trying to sell to is actually coming from. If I can
Yes.
if I can knock on your door, I can have a conversation with you and I can energetically match your emotion and bring you to an emotional level. Do you know how many more sales you're actually going to get?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, let me bring fear in there. Like, what are you scared of? Or like, what are
Yeah.
you wanting? Okay, cool. Like, oh, your bill's high here. Or like, oh, you're worried someone's going to break in. Like, whatever industry you're in, right?
Yes.
Selling on any front, like Matt and I tease all the time, we're like, if people in sales understood emotions, you would probably close 10 times more than you're currently closing right now.
Oh, I
because
think
you
more
can,
than that.
well, you
Yeah.
can match their emotion, right? You can come to a spot where they're at. So those lower emotions, even though we peg them as like bad, like air quotes, you know what I mean? They're actually not, because they're like actually a huge superpower. Because brings you to an emotion where you can say to somebody like, hey, I can sit with you in the shit. I can sit with you down here.
Yeah.
And like, I get it. It's okay. Like, and I'm not judging you, and I'm not like here to tell you to fix anything. Like, let's just sit in it. Like, well, why are you feeling guilty? Like, why are you feeling shameful? You know what I mean? Like, let's bypass apathy. Let's not be numb and like numb out to the world.
Yeah.
Let's go one above there and like, let's keep going, you know? And I want you to get angry, and I want you to move on so that you have pride, and you're like prideful in your life, and you're like, no, I freaking kick ass and I'm awesome. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think I wrote down in my journal just this past weekend with one of the speakers. Yeah, I did. So they had one of the speakers come in, and he actually has his own podcast. It's the 90-10 podcast.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing.
Yeah,
he's cool.
Yes, he's so cool.
His story. What's his name?
Is it Mason?
Mason. Yeah, I can't remember his last name.
He's so inspirational.
Very inspirational. I wasn't prepared to cry that much that night, but he knows how to get it out of me.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was really cool because he was talking to his parts, right? And that's a little bit different of a thing, but he was talking to his parts, and he did this awesome demonstration for us. But what he pretty much just said was emotions aren't good or bad.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because you always think of like anger as a bad emotion, right? And excitement as a good emotion. And I wrote that down. I remember writing that down. I was like, the freak? Wow. Yeah. I'm like, that's such a simple statement that I'd say probably the majority of the entire world does not understand.
Yeah. I'll say it.
You say it.
Yeah, I'll say it.
You say it.
No, that just sparked like one of the best things that we teach, right? Because on this emotion scale, and we can like send you the link to it so you can share it with your audience. Anger is the last negative, and I'm doing air quotes, but negative emotion, because we believe that anger is 80% positive and 20% negative.
Okay.
And the 20% negative is when somebody doesn't address their anger and represses it and pushes it down. And then energetically, what's going to happen is it's going to surface every time that they get triggered. Right. Yeah. And then that's where like abuse and rage and all that stuff comes in, because they don't know how to actually use their anger as a positive agent to propel into positive emotions. And so every time that you get angry, because to kind of go over the emotion scale, the reason that we use it is to understand where you're at and then how to get out of it and how you got in it. So if I pick anger, like I'm super mad right now.
Yeah.
You're going to go down one emotion and then up one emotion, right? So the up one emotion is, if I can push past this anger and I can use it as a propellant for good, then I can be really, really proud of myself, because the emotion right above it is pride.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And then we're just being happy after that, because we let go of our anger. It's gone.
Right.
Right. And then right under anger is desire, which I just call getting what I want. Right.
Oh.
So the fact that I'm mad is because I actually didn't get what I wanted.
Gotcha.
And it's pissing me the hell off.
Yeah.
Right. But if I can figure out how to get what I want, address my anger, then I can be proud of myself and I can move forward. Right.
Gotcha. So you have to kind of like understand what you
It's an understanding of where you're
to go forward. Right. And so I guess in a sales perspective, can you put that in a context? Or
100%. Because I feel like if salespeople are actually really innately good at this. Like when you knock on the door, you can read someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like when you're on the phone with somebody, you can read them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we're like, hey, I can read your energy. Like salespeople are very good at that.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
You know if somebody's going to say no already. You know how to handle objections. You know, like where to go with them. Yeah. Body language, everything. Right. Take a couple steps back. Right. Like, are we like all this stuff? You guys have talent that is like uncanny in the world. Right. But if we can learn how to sell with emotion, it'll be really, really cool, because like, let's say you're selling alarm systems, right?
Sure.
Somebody's really scared of somebody breaking in, right?
Yeah.
Right. So fear is the emotion there. And so all you're going to do is address the fear, right? Like, I understand that this scares you in this neighborhood. This is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And what you're wanting, because desire is right above fear, what you're wanting is just a safe place, right? And right under fear is grief, right? So all you say to the customer is say like, it probably makes you really sad that your neighbors got broken into.
Yeah.
Right. But I know what you're wanting is a safe space, and I know you don't want to feel scared anymore. So the service that I'm providing is actually going to help you in the future.
Right. So,
right? And so it's like, I'm literally talking to your emotions, because once I do that, it's personal. That's you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's not about me or my company or my bank account or the paycheck or anything like that. It's about you. We're helping you.
Well, now that, because we're talking about the customer, I saw here, it was really interesting. Reason is kind of up towards the top. Is that like the same thing as like logic? Yeah.
Good job. That was awesome.
So, well, the reason why that's interesting is because with pest is kind of different, but with like security, it's very emotional.
Right.
Now with solar, which is
It's
what
more
I do,
logical.
it's extremely logical.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing that what I'm doing when I'm training guys is like, dude, you can't be only emotional or only logical. You have to bring emotion into it sometimes. So that's really interesting though, because guys who only sell off of reason and logic tend to not do as good. How could something like that look with like that reason? Because it's so high.
But that's what I would challenge you, because I would love to take these solar guys and be like, quit fucking selling with logic. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Like, why? Like, yes, business owners, just if it like monetarily it makes sense and you're going to help me get to the next dollar amount, then awesome. Yep, I could buy, right?
Sure.
But now take that and your knowledge of that and add emotion to it, because we're actually talking to a person. We're not talking to a fucking robot.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. What actually is going on in your company? What do you feel guilty for? What's not working? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think another easy one, like an easier one is like, hey, like, what are you wanting? Like, oh, you have kids? Like, you have a family? Like, what are you wanting? Like, you know, like, what kind of vacations are you wanting to take? What are you know, like, what do you want your life to look like? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, if you sign up for solar, you put these solar panels on, right?
Yeah.
It's going to save you money. That money's going to go towards your Disneyland vacation so you can take your family, right? It's providing more money in your pocket. It's providing more value to you. I'm giving you exactly what you want. All you got to do is put these solar panels on. You're going to save money. And I'm giving you, literally, I'm just here to just give you what you want, right?
Exactly.
You just got to sign the papers, let's put it on your house, you're good to go, right? You're saving money. I'm helping you get exactly what you want. And I think a lot of times we miss that in the sales world where we're like, no, we got to provide value. And it's like you alone, because you have the service, are providing enough value there. Tap in emotionally and figure out what it is that they're actually wanting. What's that desire? What are they scared of? And then, you know, like, okay, cool, if they don't get that, are they going to be really angry? Yeah, probably, right? If they don't have money in the bank account because, you know, they're spending on utility bills or whatever, yeah, they're going to be really angry that they don't get to provide a life for their family that they're actually wanting to.
Wow.
So that's how I would use it there, of being like, I would take desire and I would say, okay, like, what is the customer wanting? What are they like, what's their nitty gritty, right? Like I got to get in the cracks. I kind of got to pry a little bit because I mean, it's going to take somebody a little bit. And a lot of times people haven't ever been asked, like, what do you want? Like, what are you wanting? What are your dreams? What are your goals? You know, what are you wanting for your kids? What are you wanting for your own personal life, right? Like people don't actually really ever ask that.
Even to add to that, the emotion right under desire is fear. And you own the company, like you own a solar company, right?
Yeah.
The reason why somebody is not going to buy from you is because they're scared.
Right.
It's not out of logic. It's not because the bank account's not there.
Trust is up a little bit higher.
Trust is all up there, but I'm telling you, what's going to move somebody emotionally is the negative emotions.
So you gotta take care of the fear before you can even get to trust.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I usually kind of look at those two as the same thing, but trust is a lot higher.
A lot higher.
Right. But even if I'm knocking on somebody's door, right, they're not going to trust me right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
They're really afraid of me. They're afraid of their bills going up. They're afraid of having to spend the time to sign something, to like take the time out of their day.
They're scared they're
away
going
from
to
their
get
kids.
spammed. Like,
They're scammed, all this stuff, right?
They're, because so much in this world is kind of shifting to like appointment setters and closers and so forth.
Right.
And a lot of times these setters are like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm like, they're scared of a salesman showing up and actually selling them.
Yeah.
Like, people are afraid to be sold sometimes. Now, the funny thing is I truly believe that everyone wants to be sold by a great salesman.
Yeah.
Because why? Exactly what you just said. They are tuning into their emotions and giving them something that they actually want.
Yeah.
Everyone is afraid of getting sold by a crappy salesman.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
not getting what they want, having a lot of fear around that, and so forth. So,
Well, everybody has trust issues too, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like we genuinely are, we are raised with trust issues, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that like, and this is where trust comes in for you, is that people aren't trusting themselves to make a good decision. Right. And so if you can walk them through the fact that their emotions are going to help them make this good decision, then they start to trust themselves. Right. It's not about trusting you. It's about them actually trusting themselves.
because courage is underneath it. So they have to like be, they have to have courage. They have to be willing to kind of like, I guess courage and trust must be so close, because like they have to be willing to show, like take a chance to trust somebody. And then the willingness and acceptance would literally be like, okay, cool. Yeah, I want to sign up today. And then acceptance is like signing it on the dotted line.
Yeah. But I literally want to keep everything underneath anger.
Because like, the biggest thing is fear. Because it's fear, right? They're scared that they're going to make the wrong decision. They're scared that, okay, if I sign up or I do this, then what? Like, which way could it go? Like, it could also, fear is so cool because it keeps people stuck in a weird way because like you just said, they're actually really scared to get sold because this actually might change their life and then they actually might have to do something with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like that fear right there where you're like, oh, it's willingness, it's trust, it's acceptance, which like, yes, it is. But if you just stick on fear, it's like, hold on, they're literally just sitting in fear of like, well, what if I make the wrong decision? What if I actually go through with this and like it gives me everything that I'm actually really wanting and then what am I supposed to do with it?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
so
what I'm doing is I'm kind of combining, I just realized what I was doing. I was combining like their actions to necessarily their emotions.
for sure,
right?
for sure.
So what
You're literally
saying
going to
is-
logic for someone
Yeah.
when I want to stay in the motions, right?
Right.
And it's
so that
interesting
makes sense.
because when somebody knocks on my door, I actually get kind of pissed that they knock on my door, right?
Yeah, even with your experience, bro. Come
Yeah,
on,
dude.
cut them some slack.
I'm like, dude, I got my kids, I got all this stuff, but I mean, like, tap into your clientele, right? But like, I'm actually kind of mad that they knocked on my door, and then I have to go to the fact that like I don't want them to be there, and so I'm going to shove them out as much as I can because I'm afraid of whatever, either spending my money or whatever they're selling, and then I'm going to go to this apathetic state. Have you heard the word apathy before?
Yeah.
You
I've heard
have.
that.
Okay, cool. So this apathetic state is what Lauren's talking about. We don't want to feel as an individual. We actually don't want to start crying.
Yeah.
We don't want to be afraid of something. We don't want to look at what actually might help us, right?
Sure.
So what we're going to do is put our guard up, and that's apathy. And that's what happens to everybody when they're selling
Yeah.
or being sold is we're putting our guard up, right?
Yeah.
So the things that's going to break them down is starting with those lower emotions. Be like,
Yeah.
is there something? I mean, there's so many things that you could say, so many questions. I should write a course about it.
Honestly,
But,
you should.
like-
Yeah. Like selling through emotion. But to your point as well, and by the way, in a different life, you guys would be like the most dynamic like sales couple.
I know,
on the
right?
planet. Like,
Isn't that
I know you did
funny?
real estate forever, which is
Yeah.
the same thing. But so the interesting thing is, I always say the way that you could tell if a salesman is like a good salesman or not is what is their retention rate.
Cool.
Just because how are people feeling when you leave their presence?
I love that.
That's the question. And so what I really like what you're saying is if you can tackle the fear, the grief, the desire, the anger, and lead them to pride, for example, throughout the course. But if you can tackle those and truly help them understand how those emotions are being either helped or controlled through your product or service, they're not going to cancel.
Yep.
Because the biggest thing that happens is you leave their presence, they get buyer's remorse because their fear spiked right back up.
Yep.
You might have thought that you handled their fear, but as soon as you left, it went right back up, and then they're calling and they're canceling, sending an email letter. And so I think the best salesmen do understand this. Now, a lot of salesmen out there understand this without having
A chart.
a chart for it.
For sure.
But having the chart would absolutely help in a major way because then they can almost like a check mark box. Like, hey, did I handle all these emotions? If I missed one or two of them, shoot, I might be getting a cancellation letter.
Right. Because what's happening is that we always say this when a couple like sits across from us is that like, we don't have anything that you can't provide for yourself. Like we're literally not going to fix your problems. You are.
So say it again. You don't have anything that they don't have themselves.
Yeah, you
Like
have
I
everything
can't give
that
you
need.
anything that you don't already have. Right. And on the doors, that would apply so much, right? Because if you can work somebody through all these emotions to be proud of their purchase, knowing that they purchased it for themselves and not just to fill up your bank account,
Or to like keep up with their neighbors.
your cancellation
or whatever.
rate is at zero,
Yeah.
dude. So
That's so good. They're doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And kind of tying this back into relationships as well. It's the idea of doing it for yourself. Right.
Yeah. Well, and understanding your emotions to then be able to like show up emotionally for your partner and for your relationship. I think that like emotions are the biggest thing missing in every single relationship, not just like your intimate relationships. I think that's like the number one thing we tease all the time. Like if you can bring more emotional like connection into your relationship, you'll have more sex in your relationship. That's probably like the biggest complaint we get from couples is like our sex life sucks. And we're like, okay, cool. It's probably actually fine. We're just missing this emotional like intimacy part here. But in all relationships, it's really the emotional side of it. But that starts with understanding your own emotions and where you're at. And then being able to say that to your partner, like in all conversations of like, hey, in my world, this is where I'm at. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'm feeling this way. It's funny. And it takes a lot of practice. Like, I feel like we finally got really good at it about a year mark. Like, we were like, and it was something we had to be so like conscious of as far as like, in conversation, we would like start a conversation and it would start off like, you like pissed me off because of this. And then it was like, hold on.
Just blamed you.
I just blamed you.
Yeah.
And it's like it's that self-awareness, right? It's like, hold on. Okay, in my world, I'm feeling this because, and it's hard and it seems really cheesy, but it really does work because it like gives the person the opportunity to be like, hold on, like, okay, you're talking about a problem that I'm associated with, but you're not blaming me. You're not expecting anything from me. Like you're taking full accountability for it. So like we always tease, like people aren't going to like us if they don't want to actually look at themselves. Cause like, we're going to push that big time. We're like, hey, like, you know, you're mad at your husband. Like, well, what are you actually not doing for yourself? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you not getting in your own life? And a lot of times women are just like missing, especially with like men who are huge entrepreneurs and very successful. Like your wife or your woman is just missing a sense of their own purpose. They just need something. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know what that looks like. I think all of it is very individualized.
Yeah.
But like as a man that is an entrepreneur, like you could help your partner out so much by helping them, like giving them permission to even just explore that. Like I'm not saying you have to fix their problem. Like please don't go to them and be like, I think you should start this, or I think you should do this, because that's just going to piss her off.
So let's think about specific examples of how you could do that.
Yeah,
a man could do that
just being there, just being like, hey, like, you know, what are you wanting? You know, like what is something you've always wanted to do with your life? You know, like if you didn't have kids or we weren't married, what would life look like?
It goes into, so there's 4 types of intimacy.
Okay.
Right. Have you heard these? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Uh-huh,
Okay, cool.
Maybe. Wait, hold on. Let me think. No,
So
I'm thinking of love languages. Tell me
okay,
intimacy.
cool.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So we touched on emotional intimacy, right?
Okay.
Physical intimacy, which is like sex.
Sure.
Intellectual intimacy, and then there's also spiritual intimacy.
Okay.
Right. And so these are the 4 ways that couples can connect. And a lot of the times there's physical intimacy because we know how to have sex. We know how to touch each other. We know like potentially what I want and maybe like not what you need or want yet. Right. Intellectual, usually that's in like the workplace or books we're sharing with each other. Right. Spiritual, we kind of touched on whether it's like, how do you tap into self? What's your sense of higher being or higher deity?
Yeah.
And then emotional. Right. And that's where Lauren is talking about, like, if you can understand emotions on the doors or selling, you will be able to sell your wife on anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so
in a positive way.
In a
For
positive
sure,
way,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And then also you'll be able to, because the feminine energy, so your woman wants to be understood emotionally. And like what Lauren said before, women actually don't emote very well. Right. Like they know how to cry, but they don't know why they're crying. Right. And so as a male, if you can bring your masculine presence into the feminine and actually hold space emotionally for them, we always say, then it's kind of cheesy, but they will open up physically for you.
Right.
Well, I mean, like this is getting a little hippie, but I'm going to share it anyways because it's cool. So you have like different energy centers in your body. You have 7 of them. Okay. They're called chakras if you want to get like real hippie.
Heard that before.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, dude,
well, your throat chakra or your throat energy center is connected to your sacral, which is like where your like sexual drive comes from. It also is where your creativity and your power lies. As every individual has it. And so when you can start expressing what you're actually wanting, that creativity and that power starts to kind of like go. So encouraging you guys as a couple to start saying what you want and expressing what you want, not only like, you know, in the bedroom or whatever, but like in life and all that. And as you start to use your voice, those 2 things are connected. Like Matt was saying, it opens it up. It's like, wait, it starts to kind of kick drive it. It's like, okay, it's circling, like we're ready to go. Like,
absolutely.
And that force, like that power alone is so powerful. And it's like, I think people bypass that a lot of times. Like it literally is creation power. You can create businesses with it. You can create literal life with it. Do you know what I mean? And so we like don't give it enough credit to say like, hold on, like this is where like our creativity and our power. So like if you're struggling with like an idea or you're struggling in your business of like, oh, I feel like I've hit a roadblock, like you may need to start having a little bit more sex and like connecting with your partner there because it's going to kickstart that creativity. It's going to bring that creativity and that like creator mentality of like, no, like I do create, I do like bring life to this. And it's actually very powerful.
No, I love that. And I'm glad you brought up those 4 things. Yeah. Kind of go back just a little bit when I asked like how you can start, and you said you started asking questions. What would you say to the couple, whether it's the man or the woman, that questions are already too much? They're triggering, for example.
Do you just mean like in like any
like
kind of
actually talking?
Yeah. So for example, it's kind of like I think I asked you, I was like, or what you said is like, what do you want? Like, what brings you fulfillment? What do you want to achieve in your life, right? And so I think a lot of let's say guys, for example, just because a lot of sales guys, they're so motivational driven, they're so goal driven oriented and so forth. And they want their wife to also have like that kind of experience. So they know the wife isn't doing it. And so they start asking questions, but the wife's not there yet. Let's say that's like triggering or something like that. So we're talking like baby steps. What are some first steps then? And now kind of going back to husband or wife that you could do for each other.
I got one.
I have one too. Go.
Okay, my turn first. So let's say you have something to tell your wife or you want to like ask her a question, right? Mm-hmm. But you're scared. And this is just like for you, an example. Like, where do you feel scared in your body?
When I feel scared?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Like you're like, oh, I'm actually nervous to tell you something.
Probably kind of like in the chest area, right? Like a tight chest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. Usually it's in like our gut or our chest, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where we're actually going to talk about emotions. And these are the first steps, right? Because if you're trying to communicate with your spouse something, you have to take everything off of her and make it about you.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where, like, if I can understand my own emotions and why I'm afraid to tell you something or why I'm angry or like why, then it's easier. So this is how it would go. Hey, it really actually scares me to talk about this so we're talking about your energy centers, like Lauren was saying, right?
Yeah.
So the one that you address is in your chest, and that's your heart center. But that's everything that you love. That's your passion. That's your core for living, right? That's right here.
Okay.
And then your solar plexus is like your gut, and that's like your that's where all of your power is, right? And that's where like it starts with creation, power, heart, and then it's hard to say something out of our throats, right?
Okay.
And so we're going to start addressing these emotions that we're feeling.
Yeah.
Hey, this is really scary for me to say to you, but all I'm wanting is for us to be better in our relationship, or for you to go get whatever you want to go get out of your life. Like I've been able to do mine, right? It scares me, and it makes me really sad that you've been in this spot that maybe you've not wanted to be in while I've been doing my own thing, right? So what it's doing, like if you can communicate that way, it's just taking all of the blame and expectation off of them and saying, hey, this is where I'm at, but I want something for you.
So some people would think that that'd be selfish, but what you're really doing is just saying, hey, it's all about me. I'm just kind of letting you know like where these thoughts and feelings are coming from my personal self.
Well, it's
then
just,
she can react, or he or she can react in whatever way they want to, right? I think it's probably on us as the individual bringing these emotions to the front to be okay with them reacting in any which way they want to.
I'll give you like an actual example. So Matt has been like, Matt's also part of We Are the They, which we love. And in that whole journey, he's been like, okay, I'm going to focus a lot on my physical. Like he's been going to the gym and like all of that, which has been amazing for him. And I think in that he's like found this love for like going to the gym and doing that.
Yeah.
Me, on the other hand, I like hate the gym. I don't know what it is. Like I teach yoga and I do that, but like that is like that's like my jam. Other than that, I would rather die than walk into like Vasa. And so Matt,
people would,
I know, right? Matt's going to the gym. He's like doing all these things. I can tell like how much it's helping him, right? And I'm good. But because he loves it, and because like in his world it's providing so much value to him, he's like, I want that for you, right? Like he wants that for me. He's like all the time, like, hey, do you want to go to the gym? And there was one Saturday, he went to the gym and he came home, and I was like a little testy, like with my kids. Like it was just kind of a rough morning. Like everyone woke up grumpy. I had made breakfast. It was a mess. I had kids crying. And he got home and he was like, hey, why don't you go to the gym? And I was like, how dare you tell, like, I was like so pissed, right? Like you were saying, like it kind of was triggering. And I was like, I don't want to go. Like so angry. I was like, I don't want to go. And he was like, well, why? Like go, just go to the gym. Like just go to a class. Like just walk in there, Lauren. It's not that hard. And I was like, you just want me to go because like you want me to be in better shape. And like I instantly like went like just my ego was just like full force, right? And he was like, holy crap. Like, no, I'm not like, I just think it would help you. And I was like, you don't know what's going to help me. So don't tell me like what is, right?
Yeah.
And he was just like, holy shit. Like I just like lit a fire under her ass. Like what is happening? And I was pissed. And I like left, went in my bedroom for a minute. And it took me a second to be like, oh shit. Like, Kate, what am I really scared of? Right. And I had to go back out to him and be like, I'm so sorry. Like I freaked out at you. Right. And we went like head to head.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm really scared. Like I'm just super insecure to go to the gym. And like, me walking through being like, I know no one's looking at me, but like in my head, everyone's staring at me because I don't know how to use the machines and I don't know what to do. And like, it's really scary for me to go and it's really vulnerable for me to go. So for me to go by myself, like I would rather hold a spider, which I actually hate spiders, before I step foot in a gym by myself because I actually don't know. So like I said to him, I'm like, maybe what we could do is like, yeah, I can see the benefit of this. And like, I do want to increase like and improve my physical health. And it is something I want to be more comfortable with. Could we go together?
Right.
Like at a time, like, could we figure out, like, we'll get a babysitter and we'll go together? Or like, could you help me just work out downstairs until I feel a little bit more confident in my ability to go and do this? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it took a little bit of self-realization there. And like, that hasn't always been the case. But like Matt was saying, there's an underlying emotion there of like why they're freaking out at you that like maybe they're just not realizing. And it may take a little bit. So I would say patience is probably the biggest thing, is just be patient with them and realize that like they may be coming at you, but like it's really not about you. It's really about them, and it's just hard. It's sometimes really hard to see that. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes minutes to just realize that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Matt didn't just show up and like start expressing his emotion because you didn't see the need to like say, hey, I emotionally feel like, obviously I'm going to practice this, but the idea is like you weren't telling her the emotions behind why you're saying she should go to the gym. Yeah. And so you read it as something completely different, and you had your own emotions that you're dealing with. Yeah. And then, of course, this book I'm reading talks about how like women will tend to say things in the moment based on how their emotions are instead of like the logic like men do. And so that makes a lot of sense how that kind of all circled around. And so, we're not going to be perfect and show up and say, hey, I have this idea. I should let my wife go to the gym. Let me share with her first the emotions behind it. But it's something to be worked on, I suppose.
For sure. And it's constantly like relationships in general you're always working on them. Like we tease all the time. We're like, we're relationship coaches, but like we still argue, like we still get in fights. We still have disagreements. Like we still don't see eye to eye. It's because we're two separate people. And like, that is actually the most beautiful thing, is like he teaches me things about myself that like nobody else could teach me. I told him the other day, I was like, when we went through our really rocky patch and we were like, do we want to stay together? Like, do we want to be married still? He always would say to me, like, I don't understand like why you stayed with me. And I was like, I really had to think about that, because I'm like, okay, cool. Like we've known each other since we were 17. Like there is an underlying like love there. And like I do love him. But I said to him the other day, I was like, I think I finally figured out the answer to that question. Like I've thought a lot about it. And I was like, you have taught me more about myself than anybody else could have ever taught me. And you've helped me be the person that I actually want to be. And you've stuck with me like alongside, whether he's realized it or not. Like he has helped me grow and propel and like progress on this path that I literally never would have had he not been a part of my life. And he won't like, and I told him, I'm like, I don't want to try to do that ever with somebody else. Like that seems exhausting. I love what you provide for me in that realm, and like everything else could go to the side. Like that alone for me is like the number one thing. I'm like, thank you for like helping me be better and me grow and me like look at myself and get everything that I'm wanting in my own personal life.
I think it's hard though, because that was beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
But I think it's hard though, because I think as men, we're actually afraid to have a conversation. And it's not even because it's like we don't know how to talk. It's because we don't know how to necessarily show up for our wives or what they're wanting, because the feminine doesn't actually say what they mean, right? Yeah. And the masculine isn't going to give all the details that the feminine is going to need. Yeah. And so it gets really sticky when we're actually trying to have conversations or when we're trying to talk, right? Yeah. And I empathize with all the dudes out there, because that was me, and I had no idea what she wanted. I had no idea what I wanted until we like hit the lowest of low in our relationship. And I think that could happen for a lot of people, but we want to avoid that for people, right? Yeah. We understand that there's beauty in all of that, but if we can avoid that, we would love that. And so I had no idea how to talk to her, right? And she didn't know how to talk to me. And we just we weren't asking the right questions. We weren't connecting the way that we wanted to. Yeah. And I think that that's most of the relationships out there right now in today's society.
Well, how does, so I've read on your page the idea of like the two love languages that you have, like how you receive it and how you give it. How does the love language aspect tie into like the emotion aspect and communicating on that?
Well, what's your first love language? Do you know?
How I receive it?
Yeah.
I think physical touch is one of those, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So physical touch for sure.
Do you know what your second is?
How I give it?
No, like there's two things that you like the most. Have you taken the quiz?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, I just can't. I'm trying to remember all of them. I know physical touch, and then
there's words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts,
And quality time.
Right. So words of affirmation. Those
Okay.
are the two.
I think we're missing one, but I can't remember what it is.
Those are definitely the two, though. That from what I remember, like
Physical touch and words of
looking at them.
affirmation.
Yeah, the list.
Okay.
Of it, yeah.
Yep. Like,
And so when you know your partners is, for example, my wife is gift giving and quality time. Quality time probably number one, and then gift giving. Yeah. And so, for example, for a guy like me that is terrible at giving gifts, and what man in this position that we're talking about doesn't struggle giving quality time?
Yeah.
Right. So how do those things play into the idea of like, okay, we have poor communication. How much of it is like love language, and how much of it is like emotions?
So I think that the love languages are so interesting. So mine are acts of service and then quality time. So my first one's acts of service. A lot of times the first one is actually just how you've been shown love your entire life. So for me, love was very transactional. It was very, if you do this, you get this. If you perform this way, you get this. If you show up this way for me, I will love you this way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it
so
makes sense, yeah.
it was very transactional. Where for us now, love is very unconditional. Like love is unconditional. So I would first off when you're thinking about your love languages, like what is your definition of love? Like what does that look like? Like if you had to say, okay, how do I want to be loved? What is like the word you could put on love?
I want to ask you, how would you define love?
Okay, so you guys are asking me how I define love.
Yeah.
Good night. Let's see. When someone puts the other, no, that's probably not good. Let me think. I'm the kind of guy that like really thinks hard before I say things, but let's see. In a relationship or like between me and my wife?
Hold on for a second.
Yeah.
Like, just be here.
Okay.
Don't be in your head, right? And feel into it. What's your first answer?
What was the question one more time?
How do you find love?
How do I find love?
Define love.
Define love.
Define
Thank you. The first thing that comes to mind is just like putting other people first.
That's it then.
Yeah.
Right? So if I can put somebody else first, then I love myself enough and they're going to love me. Right?
Sure, yeah.
But how conditional is that, right?
Right.
Like that's so common right now with people,
is.
right?
Okay.
It is super common because it's saying to you, it's saying like, if I were your wife sitting across from you, you were like, hey, if you love me, then I love myself, right? Like we struggled with this in our
Or it's
relationship
like, if
a
I
lot.
do something for you, then we can both love each other.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's say you take that away and you're actually not doing anything for her.
Right.
Does she still love you?
Right.
Do you still love you? Right? Like these are the questions that we're addressing the core of ourselves. And so love languages are a cool thing, and I want you to keep going, but love languages are a cool thing because our love language is how we like to receive it, but it's also like how we like to give it, because if yours is physical touch, I'm sure that you love to instigate.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then if hers is like gifts, I'm sure she's a really good gift giver.
Absolutely.
Right? And so where I want to go with your question is that the fact that like your spouse is literally teaching you the parts of you that you don't have.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
And that's how love language is for me, how I interpret them.
Yeah.
But I think where Lauren is going is that your second love language is usually what you're wanting.
So like
Because
if
your
hers
first one is what
quality
you were
time.
just taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like your first one is what you're taught, but your second one is what you're actually wanting. So like what I'm actually wanting is quality time, right? Like when Matt
Or
would
in
go.
your case, words of affirmation, like tell me I'm pretty, man, and it'll make me feel good. You know what
Yeah,
I
or
mean?
tell me I'm
Absolutely.
doing, but it's like tell me that
Yeah.
I'm doing a good job, that like you're proud of me,
Right.
that you're, which I mean, again, we were placing that on somebody else, but like, which is so hard. Like the mental health world is so hard because it's like, hey, you should be self-sufficient enough, right? And it's hard because like I told Matt the other day, I was like, I want you to love me. Like I do. Like there's an underlying thing where I'm like, I want you to love me. I want you to find me attractive. I want you to want me. I want you to just have eyes for me. Like I want you to like obsess over me. Like as dumb as that sounds, like that's what I'm wanting, right? Like, and I'm wanting that from you. Like I can only give that to myself so much. I'm looking to you to like also provide a little bit of that to me,
Right.
because then it like increases that more within myself. So it's hard because you're like words of affirmation. You're like, I'm putting that all on the other person, but having your partner know that, it's like, hold on, he just wants to be acknowledged. Like I just need to, you know, like express a little bit more of what I'm feeling. Like words of affirmation is not one of mine, but it's one of Matt's. And so knowing that like he loves to receive that way, for me to say like, okay, cool, me writing him a note, like we have a whiteboard in our bathroom that we like write stuff down that we need to like not forget. but like we leave each other notes on there just like randomly. Do you know what I mean? And like just knowing that, like, it means a lot to me when he does it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I can only imagine how much it would mean to him if I did that for him, and just took 2 seconds to do that. So I think a lot of times, like when we are talking about partnerships and like marriages, there's this like, I need to be perfect. I need to do I need to check all the boxes. And it's like, what if you actually didn't have to check all the boxes? Like, what if you just had to do one really small thing every day, and that increased like your connection to your partner, like just that much more, right?
Absolutely,
like, I'm not telling you have to like completely change your whole relationship overnight. Like, that's unrealistic.
Right.
But you can do the tiny, tiny, tiny little things every single day.
Yeah.
To like improve your relationship. And that's like the easiest way, is like patience and just doing like one thing. Like, it doesn't need to be this grand old list.
Well,
it's just one thing.
This is something that'll help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think especially like in the sales world, you have so many friends.
Right.
Like you have so many guy friends that you can go do the most random shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, like my job is literally like going to Topgolf, marketing with people, recruiting. Like I have a cool life outside of my relationship. Right. So this is the easiest way to get on track in your marriage, but the most difficult. And it's, can you treat your spouse like your best friend? Because your best friend, if they came to you with a problem, you would never judge them.
Right.
You would just help.
Yeah.
Right. And if they started yelling at you, or if you guys like duked it out and you got in a fight, right?
Yeah.
It's done in 2 seconds after that.
Yeah.
Right. But when it comes to our most intimate partner and our spouse, if they do anything that offends us, it's days before we talk to them sometimes. Right.
Yeah.
And we distance ourselves from them, and we punish them, and we judge them. And this is where we're just like, if you can treat your wife just like you treat your buddy that you're knocking with, that's a better relationship. Yeah. Like that's a relationship that we want moving forward. And you can actually start to be yourself. And so like we were talking a lot about like the personal work, right?
Absolutely.
Personal work is just you understanding who you are, right?
Yeah.
And you literally can be yourself around your best friends.
Right.
Right? Like you can. And it sucks that when we get in a relationship, we feel like we have to fit a mold.
Right.
And so even just being who you are in your relationship, that's where we want to take people to.
Yeah.
Right. So like, can I tell my spouse the truth? Like the absolute truth.
Yeah.
Can I actually be myself around her? Like if I don't want to clean and she's cleaning, can I sit on the couch and watch football still? Right.
Yeah.
Can I like, whatever, can I swear around her? Can I like do the things that I would do with my buddies around my wife?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if your answer is no, we want you to start looking at your relationship.
Yes.
Right?
That makes sense.
And I think that's where you were going.
No, it totally was.
But I think that's the easiest way to like, to get down to like, how is my marriage? How's my relationship? And where am I going to go forward from this? Because if I can't be myself, then it's multiple, like, what do they call it? Anyway, it's when you have to be two people at the same time. You just can't.
Well,
Right.
and I can almost guarantee, like you were saying, you mentioned at the beginning where you were like, in our story especially, there was a lot of like insecurity on my end where I was just like, I feel like I'm doing everything for him. Like he should be happy.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand why he's not happy. And like when we had our big sit down talk, like I literally thought he was going to come and be like, okay, I want to get divorced. And I was like ready to be like, okay, like I do too. Yep, let's do it. Right. Because it just felt like, oh my gosh, like we're so unhappy. Like I make you unhappy. I'm also kind of unhappy. I don't know what's going on here. Like, I'm so confused, right? But it was, again, because, like, we both were being totally two different people outside of, like, our relationship. And it wasn't anything big, but it was just small enough that we both sensed that. Like, we knew, okay, I'm not getting 100% of you, right? I was so jealous of some of his friendships. And I was just like, why? Like, I remember being pregnant with like our third baby, and I was like sobbing at the kitchen table, like, why are you going to a jazz game with your friends? Like, I just want to spend time with you. Like, I feel like you just have such a better relationship with them. And at the time, he just didn't want to show me like any of his skeletons in the closet. So it was easier to be away from me than it was to be like with me all the time. And that was all I was wanting. I was like, I just want quality time. Like, I just want to feel like I'm important. Like, call me needy, call me whatever, right?
Yeah, like you call your friends out, right?
Yeah,
like,
but I'm like, I love you and I genuinely like want to spend time with you and I want to be here, right? And there was a part of me that was like, oh shit, I don't have anybody else other than you. Like, I don't have female friendships. I just have the kids. Like, I mean, I have work and I have my job, but like, I'm craving that relationship, and like I don't want to outsource to somebody else. Like I want to give all of that to you. Like I don't necessarily have the energy to give it to a friendship. And that might be like, if you have a needy wife, that might be where she's coming from, where she's like, hey, I'm tapped.
Yeah.
And like I don't have the capacity to give this energy to anybody else. Like I just actually want to give it to you. And if you can like change your mindset on that of like, oh gosh, she's actually not being needy. Like she just wants me. Like she just wants to give me everything else. Like how cool is that? Do you know what I mean? Or she's like, hold on, like she's saving that for me. Like, wow, like I mean a lot to her. Like I want to actually match that and give that to her back.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to the spouse who has lots of friends and good connections, and the other spouse doesn't? And I mean, yeah, they might just want you, but at the same time, having relationships outside of your personal relationship is very important, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah. So like, how could a spouse help another spouse in that situation?
I mean, for me, it was really defining like what kind of relationships I wanted in my life. For me, I didn't really want empty friendships. I didn't want like friendships that were like not met with like the same like standards, or I don't want to say expectations, but like just this, I wanted my relationships to be held with so much, I don't know the right word, like compassion and like love and like just easiness that like our marriage really is. Like it's really hard. Like Matt is my very best friend, and he has been since I was 17. Do you know what I mean? And I've had like friends off here and there. I do think there's like a lot of healthiness in other relationships.
Sure.
I think sometimes though, like people get lost in that. And so for me, it was really defining like, what do I want in my life right now? Like I have the capacity to give to my kids. Like my relationship with my kids is very important.
Yeah.
I can go to like my workout classes. I can go to, you know, like the favorites thing party or whatever, right? I truthfully am not a woman that has a lot of girlfriends. So like, it's really hard for me to be like, yeah, like I want to pour all my time into those, because truthfully, they're not really relationships that I really want, to be honest with you. Like if I really get honest about my life and my like what I'm wanting, it's like my intimate relationships are my most important thing. That also goes with being said, Matt has tons of friendships outside of our marriage. Yeah. And for me, it's like, I love that he can go and get his cup full and he can come back and I get like a better version of him. It didn't always used to be that way. Yeah. But then I can find my own things that I love to do. Like I love spending time with my mom and my sister. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'll plan like a dinner to go out to dinner with them, or like, you know, I'll reconnect with an old friend and be like, hey, do you want to go get coffee or whatever? Do you know what I mean? And so it's
the
really
basis of this, of what she's talking about is, and to answer your question, is like, we want you to get exactly what you want in every single scenario and your spouse. Yeah. So,
and that's possible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so if your spouse doesn't want to go and network with you, right, then she's going to find something that she wants to do. And this is where we come up with the term that raises a lot of people's hairs, but it's being selfish. Right. And usually that comes with a lot of negative connotations. Yeah. Because if we're selfish, then we can't be selfless and we can't serve and stuff like that. Yeah. We just like to see it as, if I'm selfish, then I can give more to you.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've said this on the podcast a few times, but there needs to be a selfish and a selfless reason for everything that you do. And so, I mean, sometimes people are acting very selfishly, and what they don't, if they were to really think about it, they could actually find the selfless reason in what they're doing.
That's beautiful.
That's amazing.
And the crazy thing is, it goes the opposite. A lot of times people are being selfless and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm giving. And maybe they don't feel like super fantastic about it. It's because, hey, if you dig down, you're actually being very selfish with your selflessness. And so I think that probably would bleed into a marriage pretty well.
But yeah, because it rips at the individual, like at that person's self. Because if I'm always giving and I'm not doing what I actually want to be doing, then I'm going to be empty. Yeah. Right. And then that's when like anger and resentment and grief all come up, which is a good thing, because now we get to address it. Right. But that's when we actually understand that like you're not getting what you want, and you're giving too much, but you felt good for a little bit, but now you don't, right? Yeah. And so in these relationships that you're creating, like there's another route to take it as well, right? Yeah. Saying, hey, I really want you as my wife to come to this event with me to network, because this is really important for me, right? Yeah. Or vice versa. Hey, I don't want you to go to the event. I just want you to stay home with me. Right? Yeah. So in this scenario, which happens every single day for couples,
just total impasse, right?
And so there's one thing that we always do, and this is why we want to separate each other's worlds and take each other out of it, just so we can see ourselves enough to be able to want to see our partner's world. Right? Like, okay, cool. I understand that this is important for you that I go to this networking event, right? Yeah. Because I love you, I'm going to find a reason to want to be there. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
And that reason might not be like that she's a social butterfly and she doesn't want to go talk to all these people. That reason might be because there's like really good food. Yeah. And that's enough. That's enough of a want to go to an event and get dressed up and get out of the house, even though that's not what she loves to do. Right. And so we're finding a reason for you to get what you want always.
But it has to be about you. So like, it's like Matt was saying, like, oh, there's good food. Like, okay, yeah, I love food, right? It's like, or maybe it's like, I want to get dressed up because I want to feel good about myself. And like, I've been in sweats all day and taking care of kids or whatever it is, right? It's like, what is my reasoning for wanting to do the thing that maybe I wasn't really wanting to do at the beginning? Like, can you change that mindset of like, okay, cool, you know, like I want to go here, or I want to, you know, do this. A lot of times, like with us, it's like with each other's families, like, I don't really want to go over to your parents' house, or he's like, I don't really want to go over to your parents' house, absolutely. Right? But it's finding that underlying thing of like, okay, hold on, like, well, why do I want to go over to your parents' house? Or like for me personally. So,
but you have to start to see the other person's world and want to see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in the example that you gave, you know, let's say like the wife was coming to the man's. So is it just whoever's will is stronger? Because I mean, we are supposed to do the same thing, right? So we say, well, I need to find a reason to want to stay home tonight with my wife. So is it just whoever's will is stronger is going to, or whoever's more emotionally adept is going to succumb to the other person's wants?
Well, the thing is that like, if I'm forcing you to do something or trying to control you, then I'm wrong and I'm not going to be able to win. Right.
Yeah.
And so the invitation is always out there. But let's say that in this scenario, she doesn't want to, and she decides, no, I'm staying home, but you need to go, and you go. Right.
Yeah.
Can you feel good about yourself knowing that your spouse got what she wanted and you also got what you wanted? Is your relationship still intact? Right. Because even though it might be a couples event at a gala, if she didn't want to go, you don't want her to be there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And even like if you don't go and you end up sitting on the couch and you wanted to go, you don't want to be on the couch. Right. Yeah. And so this is where it's just like, there is no give and take. It's just, do you want to see the other person's world? And if you do, then you'll go.
I mean, it really goes in. I mean, like, I think when Matt talks about like selling your partner, it is a little bit like it's that emotion, right? Like, why is the event important to you? Why is the friendship important to you? Why is the, you know, lunch important to you? And like, why is it more important, because your spouse is going to think this, why is it more important than spending time with them? Or how can you get them to buy in to the experience, to come with you so that they're doing it on their own, but that they can also get exactly what they're wanting on the other end of it, right? So it's like, hey, come with me. And then when we get home, you know, like,
it's sweats
let's
and
do
Netflix,
this,
do you
like
know
whatever.
Like,
do you know what I mean? Or like, hey, you know, like we could go get ice cream after. I don't know. Like, I'm using the dumbest examples, but I'm trying to give you
like good examples to me.
I'm trying to give you this a glimpse of like, you can both get exactly what you're wanting. It's just being vulnerable enough to share why it's important to you and why you're wanting it, right? Like maybe it's like, oh, your wife wants to stay home because she just wants like your undivided attention. Well, okay, cool. When you're at the event, can you give that to her still? Like, I guarantee you probably can. It's actually a really fun game, right? Like, no matter where you're at, can you like lock eyes with each other? Can you be more affectionate and physical? Like, can you show more physical touch there? Can you show her off? Can you do that, right? Then she's getting actually exactly what she's wanting at the event with you. And you didn't have to stay home in sweats and just watch a movie and probably fall asleep. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely,
so there's a lot of like kind of play with it a little bit and kind of getting creative and saying like, listen, like, you're what I'm wanting. I do want to spend time with you, but like, this is why this is so important. And like, in my world, this is why it's important. And they get to buy in of whether or not they want to, you know, join, and you get to buy into their world too. So it's really just like there is no really give and take in my opinion. It's like, hey, cool. Like we're on the same team. Like, cool. Like you got me to buy in enough. Like, let's go. Like, let's see. It's like the cold punch thing. Like, I don't really want to go do this, but like I'm bought in. Like, let's go see if it is everything that you claim that it is. Do you know what I mean?
And this boils down to your relationship in a whole. It even boils down to like sex. Right. And especially sex, because I would never want her to do anything because I wanted her to. Right. I want her to do stuff because she wants to.
Right.
Because that's where like personal development, self-growth, self-awareness, all of this comes into play. Because if she can get what she wants and so can I, then I know that she's not going to get angry. She's not going to be afraid. She's not going to do any of those things. And I'm going to be happy, and so is she.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is, we call it a conscious relationship. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we can both be self-aware enough to decide for ourselves to go and do something. Right. Like even at this networking event that we just hypothetically drew up. Right. Even at this event.
It wasn't
like,
hypothetical, by the way. The reason why this is such a challenging episode for me right now is because literally not only am I interviewing you guys and having a conversation, but as you're talking, I feel like I am receiving therapy.
Oh, I love that.
And in the back of my head, I'm like, holy crap, how does that apply in my marriage? Right. And so this has been very helpful, but also very difficult. So I'm like, because you'll say things I'm thinking about. Because this past weekend, we had our Christmas event.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was a black tie. And I didn't really understand what black tie was. And so I'm just thinking through how this example is directly applied to the weekend I just had. So keep going. It's hilarious. I'm just like, listening, but also like trying to think. This is probably gonna be an episode where I like listen back like 3 times. Like,
that's awesome.
Okay, that's the part where anyway. So keep going.
No, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Back to the networking event that we were hypothetically working up.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
No, I was gonna say,
go for it.
Like, it's interesting because we talk so much about like treating your partner like your best friend, or you know, being emotionally available for them, and like really, truly, it really is just like the coolest thing. Like you just said, you're like, hold on. I'm gonna have to go back and like I'm rethinking like the coolest thing about like relationship coaching, and especially like with us, is that you get both of us, right? It's not just like one person. And the reason we love to meet with couples is because like if your wife were sitting right here, we could ask her questions and you would get let into her world in a kind of a like safe space, right? Because she's like, oh, there's people like mediating the conversation, right? He can't like freak out. He can't yell at me. I can't yell at him. Like things are a little bit more civil. Like granted, that definitely happens in sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it really gives you guys the opportunity to really see each other. Like in your own world with your wants and your desires, that like I don't think couples get the opportunity to have really ever. And it kind of sets the foundation to say, okay, cool, we're going to go to coaching and we're going to sit and we're going to talk, and it starts to like teach you guys how to do it outside of coaching. Like our goal with coaching is not for you to sit and be our clients forever. Like I actually would very highly discourage that. I'm like, okay, cool, give me 6 months of your time and I can change your life and your marriage going forward. You're going to be able to have these exact same conversations by yourself without me having to like ask questions or be like, or challenge you and be like, do you really believe that? Or like, wait, hold on. Like, did you just hear what you just said? Those kind of things. Do you know what I mean? And so it's so cool because your partner can teach you more about yourself than literally anybody else.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And my wife and I, we've done couples therapy before, like even this year or two. And it's funny, I absolutely love what you guys are saying. And I love the idea of you guys doing it together, which is why I was excited to have you come on, because, you know, seeing one therapist, it's a one point of view. And then we've gone back and forth, like, do we want a man? Do we want a woman? How do we want that to do? And the sad thing as well is anyone who hates on like coaching or therapy, it's like you probably just hated the therapist, but we're too scared to like fire them, or I don't know what you say, fire the therapist, right? We learned that thankfully through years. Like we had one like, this guy sucks. Like it just does, not that he sucks, but it just did not work with our personality
that makes sense.
All. And so we were finally like, okay, screw this. Let's try to find somebody else. And so that was something that really helped this year. Was found a guy, and long story short, like, he ended up helping me realize I got ADHD, which neither one of us knew. I used to shit on it all the time from my upbringing. It's a whole nother story. But the crazy thing is like he was perfect to help us through that, because he was an adult diagnosed with it. But then it kind of ran its course. For sure. Where it's like, okay, cool, I got testing done and everything like that. Yep, I got it. He kind of helped us understand each other. But it kind of got old. And it's like, you don't need to stay with the same therapist forever.
No.
And honestly, like if you are, that's probably not a good thing, right?
For sure.
The therapist that you saw when you're 18 is not going to help you when you're 28. And so I really like what you guys are saying. It's like, you both have such unique like talents and abilities coming from your perspective and your perspective, to where you can help people and you can get them through whatever they're getting through for a period, and then you're teaching them how they could do it on their own as a couple.
My thing is like, I mean, like our thing really is big time is like, we want to give you the tools so that you can go and you can build like a new foundation, a new home together. That is like, you have your separate worlds. Like I want to give you all the tools so you can build your own world together and really create that. But it's like the mental health world is so cool because there are so many incredible people. Like you've got therapists, you've got coaches, you've got all sorts of groups and things like that you can join. And like you're saying, like you can learn something from everybody. Like everybody has something to give you. And like all I want is for people just to get help. Like I'm just like, okay, cool. if we're not the right fit for you, like we probably have someone we can recommend to you. Do you know what I mean? And like,
absolutely.
and that's okay. I always like, when I did real estate, I always used to tease like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I know that, like, and I'm okay with that, right? Like you're either going to like me or you're not going to like me. And there's no like in between, like, and that's okay if you don't like me. Like I give you permission not to like me. And if you don't like me, please don't work with me. Cause guess what? You're going to bug me and I don't want to work with you either. Right. So it's like, because we're going to show each other things that are going to like piss each other off. Right. And I get to look at those and you get to look at those, but it's really like, cool, like let's challenge some of those things. But like you were saying, there's something to be learned from everybody that you come in contact with, like therapist, coach, whoever, even like relationships on a day-to-day basis. Like you can learn something from somebody at the grocery store. You just have to be willing enough to like let them in and be like, oh, that person just flipped me off on the side of the road. Like, I wonder what they were going through. Those kind of things. So
well, we learned so much from that, from the one therapist that we didn't like as well.
Yeah.
I remember we saw him a couple times and she was like, I hated how he like called you out for something. And I was like, yeah, I kind of hated how he just assumed that you were feeling that way. And it brought us a little bit closer together.
Cool.
And I know that wasn't his goal, but hey, at least he kind of helped in some capacity.
For sure.
Bring us together.
That's really cool.
Well,
though.
I think that there's one thing, because we just want people to start talking.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't want anybody to keep suppressing emotions. We don't want people to start like to stay in their anger, to stay in their grief. Like we just want people to start talking. Yeah. And because we have seen the benefit for ourselves, because as you start talking, we take the energy approach and the spiritual approach, you start moving emotionally your body and energetically your body. Like you start to heal. Like you literally start to align. Yeah. Like if you've got we used to be way overweight, but like
okay.
And
Can't
when
see
we
that at all. That's pretty surprising.
When we jumped into this world, it was like, wow, like we have neglected ourselves. Right.
Wow.
And it was literally all through the fact that like we were able to address how we felt and then talk about it. So like whether it's a therapist, like I don't give a fuck, like just start talking to somebody because that's going to help you understand who you are and release everything that you've been holding on to, because that's what we do.
Well, and I think another thing, sorry, we're like, go. But I like feel so strongly about this is that like, especially in the background that you come from of like entrepreneurs and like you have sales guys that are trying to hit goals. And I think those goals are amazing and those accolades are incredible. But speaking from experience of somebody who like, that was like my why, like I got to hit this next tier. I've got to get this next award. I've got to make this next like dollar amount. Like, you know, like me like I was very driven like individually with like the outward look of like, okay, how do I look to other people as far as my success goes? And that was my driving force. Like we would be like beginning of the year, it's like, how much money do you want to make this year? And I was like, I just want to hit this goal, like this tier of like level in our company. Do you know what I mean? And like, I knew what the dollar amount was, but it was really like, no, I want to hit this level. And like, I would really challenge everybody to think like, okay, like once you hit it, then what? Right? Because for me, that was the reality where it was like, I hit it. We were doing great financially. Like Matt was very successful. I was very successful. We had everything. And like my life came completely crushing down, like mentally for me personally. Do you know what I mean? And so when all your worth is placed on like external things and you don't actually know how to love yourself, you don't know how to talk to yourself or let alone anybody else and really let somebody in emotionally, you will like literally start to kill yourself internally, and it's going to manifest itself out to like, I mean, for me and Matt both, it was like suicidal thoughts. It was like, you know, would life just be better if we weren't here? All of those things, you know what I mean? And it was like, wait, what have I been working towards? Everything else is shit. But like, yeah, I got money in the bank and like, yeah, I've got this really cool award. And it just sucks. Like, it's like, hold on, that's really important. But there's so much more to life than that. And I think that those things come when everything else is kind of aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for anybody who puts their money and their career as a first priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned that this year, and I've said this before, but
Good for
literally, through the goal, and by the way, this is coming up for anybody, but Jimmy Rex does like that goal setting
on the 23rd.
seminar.
He's
Yeah, exactly. And I did it 2 years ago, and it was fine. But then last year I did it. I was actually in Slovakia. We were at my father-in-law's house.
Okay.
And it was a couple weeks after we coming into integrity with my wife.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that was crazy. I dropped some truth bombs on her about some stuff that I wasn't fully truthful about.
Good for you. Yeah.
And so we're in Europe. We're not super on the same page. We're not really loving each other right at that moment, right? But we're stuck in a terrible house for our family anyway. So it's snowing outside. It's a lot of uncomfortable circumstances that are around us, right? So I'm sitting there doing this goal setting for this previous year in review as well.
Yeah.
And I finally was like, I can't remember in what order Jimmy starts. I'm not sure. But when I was writing it down, I can't remember if I fast forward, but long story short, I just said, you know what? Instead of setting my money goal and financial goal and my work goal first, let's like set a family goal first.
I love that.
And let's set this goal and this goal. And fulfillment was a huge thing for me because I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to be creative. I have always been creative. I am not creative right now in the work that I do. So anyways, I kind of set those things as my first priority. And then I set work. Yeah. And then I even told myself, I wrote down some pretty ambitious goals, but I said, I almost kind of also wrote down like a side goal, like, okay, what's my minimums?
Cool.
Like, what are the things I have to hit in order to like, for us to like live and be successful?
Yeah.
So I kind of had like a window. I said, hey, listen, would it be cool if I hit $750,000 in income? Sure. But I'm not going to sacrifice my priorities to hit this.
I love that.
And then I did write down that minimum. I say, but I have to at least make this much so that way this doesn't totally fall by the wayside either, right? So I really urge people this year to do that for 2025 as well. I'm going to release this before 2025 to make sure people are hearing this. But the idea is set goals according to your priorities. And then, and like, let's say if your relationship should be really high up on the priority list, right? Set the goals according to your priorities. And then when it comes to financial and business, give yourself windows, honestly.
I like that.
Don't set like such a hard goal that you are going to be so gung-ho to hit and be blinded, kind of put blinders on for the other things.
Yeah.
Well, I saw this thing the other day too, going along with goals of like, instead of focusing so much on like the financial or like the monetary, like award side of things, it was like maybe try to write down goals of like, what new hobby do I want to try this year, or like what's something, you know, like what's something new that I want to like start doing, or like all of those, because I think a lot of times we focus so much on like physical and like monetary goals when it comes to the new year, where it's like, okay, cool, but you can totally bring those into your relationships, right? It's like maybe I want to be on like 20 new podcasts, or like I want to do, you know, like I want to meet new people. I want to meet at least like 150 new people this year. And like, these are the categories I want to meet them in. I think it's just so cool to get creative with those. And then especially like in your relationship being like, you know, this year I want to go on like 2 couples trips with just my spouse, and like, or I want to, you know, like make date night a priority. It's just like little things like that, or like I want to spend 10 minutes every night together just doing absolutely nothing, or putting our phones away at like 5 or 7 or whatever's realistic for you. So it's kind of cool just to like get creative with them, because I feel like we're so like brainwashed into being like, it's this way and this is how you have to do it.
Yeah, and there's like a structure to it. There's like, no, it's no BS structure. You just, it is what it is. And I'd say too, if you know, if you could do year goal setting with your spouse, that'd be fantastic. You know, my spouse wouldn't like necessarily sit through the whole 2-hour thing. For sure. That's not her vibe. But what I did realize was last year, he asked a question. He said, okay, write down when you look. So the first thing you do is you look at 2024 in review, right? Okay, now write down the names of people who you met this year that were somewhat influential. Oh, wow. And I got pissed at myself because I used to say, your net worth is your net worth, blah, blah, blah. Your net worth is your net worth. And I like wrote down 2 names. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it because I just joined the men's group and so didn't really know them yet or anything. I was like, holy crap, that's not good. So I told my wife, like, this year, I'm going to have like 1 billion names on there. I started a podcast and I got to know my men's group a whole lot more. And so for this year, when we're setting goals, I'm like, okay, 2024, Dan, maybe a little more selfish than not. I've met all these people. We're going to try to do it as a relationship next. Okay, let's talk about the couples that we can meet together. That's cool. Because that's like a net worth that we could do. And that's something that she can totally get on board with. For sure. Well. So like finding my weak points, turning those into strong points, but then also turning your weak points into strong points with a couple as well. Yeah. Well, and sharing it with your spouse. Like if you're somebody that's a goal setter and your partner isn't, like let them into your world. Like I can guarantee if you tell them that it's important for them, like for them to know, they're going to want to listen, right? Yeah. Like, be like, hey, tonight, can I share some of these goals I wrote down? Like, I really want you to help me stay accountable for some of these. And like Matt and I did 75 hard together. We totally failed it, but we like went pretty far in it. But that's awesome. But that's awesome. It was really fun to do together because like we could hold each other accountable. Like I was like, I want a donut. And he was like, no, like we're doing 75 hard. And he'd like be like, I'm going to go eat a soda. And I'm like, no, like you can't, we're not doing that, right? So it's nice to have that accountability, especially in your partner who like, I can promise you they're the one person that wants your success more than you like
equally as much as you do. I can
Yeah.
almost guarantee that.
Man, that's such a rabbit hole that I'd want to go down. But we'll probably save for another time. Just like with the oh shit gold. I don't know if you did that this year. So yeah, with all of that combined. But it kind of goes back to what we were talking about anyways throughout the podcast, different things. Well, to kind of wrap up, just maybe like a short answer from each of you. I'm curious. Going into this next year, if you could grab the ear of a sales rep or an entrepreneur and you could just like yell in their ear something that they should do to help improve their relationship this upcoming year, what's something that you would tell them?
I get to go first on this one.
I was just looking at you. I'm like, hey, I think I know what you're going to say. So I think our answer is the same.
Tell the truth, no matter what. And you're not telling the truth to that person for them. You're doing it for you. And so if there's something that comes up for you that feels uncomfortable, right, then that's exactly what needs to happen. Yeah. So there's this thing called fear that we've been talking about this whole time, right? Yeah. Once you feel it, that's when you have to do something. You have to do it. Right? So, and the scariest thing that we can do as a human being is actually have somebody see us for exactly who we are. But that's exactly what we're needing. So that would be my message to anybody is tell the truth on the doors, selling with your wife, with your kids, with yourself. Yeah. Like that will change your world.
That. Is that about the same answer?
Kind of, but I mean, yeah, I could go off of that. But no, I would say join our community that's coming this next year. So we have a couples community that will be happening. It's called Together Community. And it's focused 100% on couples. So everything that we talked about today of like, hey, I feel disconnected from my partner, or I feel like I, want to learn how to have these conversations. It's literally relationship coaching just on like a group scale. But it's tailored specifically to each individual. So you'll get like 2 calls a month with us as far as coaching calls go as like a group. You'll get like weekly like connection ideas to how to connect with your partner, how to have conversations, all of that kind of stuff. Or for the month of January, we're launching on January 15th, but for the month of January, it will be $99 with just a 6-month commitment. So come join our community. It's going to be so incredible. I'm so excited about it. It's something we want to do for a really long time. But like I said, it's those easy things that are just kind of like a no-brainer of like, cool, like $99 is literally a date night. So like just come do it.
That's a cheap date night.
It's a super cheap date night. You don't have to have a babysitter, right? You get access to like all of our courses, everything within that. Like you get meditations, breath work, yoga flows, like things you can do individually and together. Like we really try to just jam pack it full of like everything that we wish we would have had, everything that we do have. Like when I say it's like our little, like it's like our 5th child, really. Like I'm like so excited about it because I'm like, wait, I know that relationship coaching isn't accessible for everybody to come do and like sit in our office. So like this was our way of being like, hey, we can give you like relationship coaching on kind of the same scale. It's just not as personalized. And then if you're like, hey, I actually really love this, I want to do one-on-one coaching, then it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
So
and you could do that remotely too, right?
Everything will be Zoom. Yeah, we'll have a few probably like like networking events or things like that, just to get to know everybody if you're local, but like, because we want to make it fun. I loved what Walt has done for like the men, and I'm like, hey, we need something like that for couples, like so people can kind of just get into integrity with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Because a lot of people have tried couples things, and usually it's one, either super expensive, or 2, just the right people aren't running
for sure. So come join our community. It'll be super fun.
I love that. That's a perfect way. I was going to ask what you had coming up next anyways. And then I already bought the Grind Together, Start the Conversation cards. So using the cards, just being honest and telling the truth no matter how much it hurts. And then joining a community of like-minded people. That goes right into the networking thing we were talking about as well. Your guys' Instagram is?
At Grind Together Co.
At Grind Together Co.
Yep. So just come follow along there. That's where we post everything. And come ask us any questions if you need help. We're always in our DMs. So we respond to everybody. So yeah, if you need help or have questions, we love chatting with people. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Dan, thank you for having a podcast, and thank you for sharing your message with the world.
Thank you.
Man.
I feel like I learned more than anybody else that's going to listen to this.
Well, you're awesome. We appreciate you.
Okay, great. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.